So just a quick video. This is kind of an important story. Grassley has released a statement saying that they received a letter from someone who claims to be Ford's ex-boyfriend of 6 years. And he says some things that kind of doesn't wash entirely with her testimony. But the most damning thing is he claims that he witnessed her coach someone on a polygraph. Now, this is important because Ms. Mitchell, the prosecutor that was interviewing Dr. Ford, who I thought did a pretty good job and was quite polite about the whole thing, asked her point blank, have you ever been coached on a polygraph? Have you ever coached other people? Have you ever discussed? And Dr. Ford was emphatic. It wasn't wishy-washy. She's like, no, I never did any of that. So if she lied about that, that's going to be a huge deal. Now, we still have to see proof. You could see the letter, and I'll put a link below, that you could see Grassley's statement, and you could see the letter that was released by this ex-boyfriend. His name is redacted, but strangely enough, they actually published the name of the woman that Dr. Ford supposedly coached. And I'm not going to say the name, but you could look it up yourself. It's no one that I recognize or anything, but still, I don't want to be blasting people's names if that's not official or anything. So basically he claims that this woman was a lifelong friend of Dr. Ford, was applying for some job where she had to take a polygraph, and Dr. Ford, who has a background in psychology, went through with here's what to expect with the polygraph, here's what it's looking for, things of that nature, and he witnessed this. So it's not just an anonymous claim like a lot of these ones you're seeing about Kavanaugh. This is a person who gave his name, who presumably would be able to prove that he dated her for 6 years. I'm sure there's photographs or other people who can confirm this if it's true, and who specifically says, here's the name of the woman that was coached by Dr. Ford on the polygraph. Again, this could all be a lie. I'm not going to take it just at face value, but these are very specific things that could be followed up on by the FBI. And if true, that's going to be damning, and here's why. It doesn't prove definitively that Dr. Ford's lying about her allegations, but you have to look at what we have to go on. We don't have any evidence whatsoever. We have supposedly 3 witnesses, none of which can corroborate her story, one of which is her friend, so they would have incentive. There wouldn't be an incentive to lie about this. So all 3 of the people supposedly named, at the party, can't corroborate. So no evidence. They can't corroborate. Her story is shifted and has major holes in it, right? With all kinds of things. How many people were involved in the assault? How many people were at the house? Could you hear them talking downstairs? When did it occur? All of these have changed over her what she supposedly told the therapist, versus what she told the Washington Post, versus what she wrote in a letter to Feinstein, versus what she testified to in front of the committee. So we have no evidence. The witnesses can't corroborate. Her story's changing. The last thing you have to go on, which kind of her story changing hurts this as well, is her credibility. For me, that's never enough. Everyone will say, well, she could have changes in memory because look at the literature on trauma. This could happen. Well, yeah, that's true, but also look at the literature on eyewitness testimony and how inaccurate it is. And most of that literature is talking in a contemporaneous sense. So it's like if I see a crime and then I have to testify about it 6 months later or 3 months later, even then eyewitness testimony is not very accurate. So imagine 36 years later, right? What could happen? So that makes this even more difficult. And what we're seeing then is but no one said, the people that say look at the literature on trauma, they never say, okay, but look at the literature on eyewitness testimony for some reason. Also, there's a lot of literature and just anecdotal evidence, everybody knows this, that you can't tell, like, people could look very convincing and still be lying. And you know that people on the left believe this because that's what they're saying about Kavanaugh. I just don't believe it. He's a crybaby. That's how a guilty person would act. But they somehow know that Dr. Ford, they just have a gut feeling that she's telling the truth. Sorry, I tried to, I'm human, we all are. I tried to pull away from the emotionality of it, though, from both of them. And you can see my videos. I thought I was fair to Dr. Ford, and I thought that she came off sounding pretty good. I thought the same about Kavanaugh. But I was trying, when I'm making a decision of what I thought or what should be done, to just look at the evidence. Try to, as much as you can, just don't leave yourself, and this is true in everything politics, right? And both sides do this. They're looking for, some victim to prop up and then blame the other side. So, you'll see the Democrats try to put up, an illegal immigrant that's been wrongly, had some kind of egregious thing done to them by law enforcement, and they'll say, see, this is why, here's a great illegal immigrant, and they'll tell their story, and then you'll see the right do this with a victim of an illegal immigrant, like an illegal immigrant kills someone, and so they'll have their parents on. I'm not saying you can't take that stuff into account, but that's just emotion driven. That's not the kind of logic driven, and I don't really like like the politicians play with people's emotions like that. But I guess it's inevitable. Anyways, it's kind of a non sequitur. I'm just saying you try to look at the evidence, and there's just no evidence to back up her claim. Now, if we're seeing that she blatantly lied, right? And here's what I like really want to focus on here is there's a difference in like lies, and you see this with Trump all the time. Like there's lies that are just like braggadocious type lies where he's kind of stretching the truth. So he'll have a large crowd, but he'll say it's the largest crowd ever. Yes, that's a lie, but that's not, to me, that's not a big deal. And everyone does this. So Obama did it. Maybe you say, well, Trump does it more than other people, but those type of lies to me, it's just like, whatever, you're immature, it's stupid. But everyone with any kind of sense is just like, yeah, this is just dumb. To me, the lies I'm more interested in is like, if you like your doctor, you could keep it, things of that nature. No, or, like James Clapper saying like, no, the NSA is not picking up American people's communications. Those are the lies that actually affect us, blatant lies, right? And that's the type of lie we're talking about here. You could have lies where like, maybe I think that Ford's probably lying that she doesn't remember that she only had one beer. But to me, it's not a huge deal. I think that Kavanaugh's probably also lying or stretching the truth where he's like, I'm not a bad drunk. Like, he didn't really say he wasn't a bad drunk, but he's like, the Ralph Club, that wasn't for me throwing up for booze, that was for food. That's probably stretching the truth. But I don't think either of those things are a really big deal. But it would be a big deal if you're lying about the details of the case. This wasn't a wishy-washy thing. It wasn't like, she didn't answer, well, yeah, I've talked to people about polygraphs, but I didn't technically coach. It wasn't like that. This was like an emphatic, no, I've never done that. And the polygraph is going to be very important because, as we know, this is one of the things that the left is saying, see, she took a polygraph, it came back clear, even though it was only 2 questions, even though it was just based on her statement that she wrote that was all chicken scratched and changed up and things like that. And even though we now know that some of the things she wrote there, she later changed her story even in front of the committee. For example, she says that there were 4 boys, 2 girls, but it turns out that at the party, but it turns out it was just, it could be more than that, she said. And that there was only 1 other girl that she named and things of that nature. So it shows that if she passed that polygraph, how could she change her story then, right? It doesn't make sense. Then clearly the polygraph wasn't that reliable. I'm not saying she intentionally lied in the polygraph. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying they're not that reliable, and her story's changed since then, so why should it be taken? But if she lied, and she actually has coached people, then that goes to show that she has almost no credibility left. That, again, that's not a lie like, yeah, I remember only having 1 beer. That is blatantly lying about something that's very important to the case. And if she doesn't have credibility, what do we have left? There's no evidence. The witnesses, none of them could corroborate the story. All that would be left is her credibility. Her story keeps changing, and now she may have blatantly lied about this. So we'll see. I hope the FBI looks into this ex-boyfriend and the woman he named as Dr. Ford's friends that was coaching the polygraph. It is worth mentioning he says other things in this that's kind of clashes a little with her story. For example, he says they flew all the time. She claims she had a fear of flying. He says that she had an apartment that was really small and only had 1 door and didn't seem to have any claustrophobia. He says that in the 10 years he knew her, he never brought up Kavanaugh's name or any sexual assault whatsoever. He had no idea about it, which you would think that someone who's probably intimate, they've been dating 6 years, that at that point you would think you would see something perhaps, because she's claiming it affected her starting in college, just had a huge effect on her. So strange that he didn't notice anything. And he even gives the details of how they broke up. He says she cheated on him, and then after the cheating, they broke up, but she continued to use his credit card, and eventually he had to call her and was like, hey, I thought you're not supposed to be using this card. She lied and said, I'm not. And he was like, okay, I'm going to get fraud investigation involved. And she was like, okay, it was me. So all of that little stuff goes to maybe diminish her credibility. But the big thing would be the lie detector, which the FBI should be able to look into both this ex-boyfriend and the woman that she supposedly coached up on the polygraph. We'll see. Again, this isn't definitive proof of anything, but it just goes to show. Oh, and the last thing I'll say is the funny thing is, like, you should ask yourself, like, who is this ex-boyfriend? Does he have an axe to grind, right? Maybe the breakup was bad, and so he doesn't like her. Is he somehow connected to Republicans or something of that nature? Do all of his details add up? Is there anyone else that could corroborate this, right? These are all questions that should be asked, and these will be asked asked by people on the left. But the absolute irony is, this is what they're calling us monsters for asking of Ford. You're victim shaming if you do it to her. We're not allowed to make sure that her story adds up. We're not allowed to ask questions of why there are details that were forgotten. We're not allowed to ask if she has an axe to grind or something, or that the timing of what she says is suspect or anything like that. We have to suspend all of those questions for Dr. Ford, but then to the people on the left, right? But then they'll come around and say, well, wait a minute, this guy's making an accusation that she coached someone on a polygraph and all these other things about flying. And they'll ask all these details, which they should, but they don't get the irony that it's a blatant double standard. This is why we should not view people as guilty based just on accusations. We should demand proof. We should look into people's background to make sure that there's not a reason to make up an allegation, and to make sure that all the facts are adding up. That's what reasonable people do. The left knows this because that's their initial gut reaction anytime they hear something against anyone on their side. But they want to have a double standard where they just think that we should bow out, anyone should bow out and not ask any questions when they're accusing someone on the right. So it'll be a story worth following. The FBI, there are rumors that it'll wrap up tomorrow with the investigation. So let's see what happens. Have a good one.